Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right. Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler on with you. As always, such a pleasure to be here. And I'm excited to dive into another powerful conversation with everybody. Today, we're talking about showing authentic interest and keeping the upper hand in dating. And what we're really looking at today is learning how to navigate the power dynamics of dating in a genuine and authentic way, and fostering meaningful connections with people that offer true potential to lead to conscious love. And as I was just saying, I was chatting with all my people here on Instagram this morning. And, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, right? Like there are certain power dynamics in early dating, and most people want to maintain the upper hand. And when I talk about maintaining the upper hand, I'm like, I don't want to expose myself too much until I get a feel for where you are. Right? Like, I don't want to let you know that I'm too into this or that I like you or show too much interest until I get a feel for where you are and I can expect from you. And I don't want to set myself up for rejection. I don't want to make myself too vulnerable. And what I've seen in doing this work, I've been doing this work for well over a decade now. I've coached lots and lots of people. I've coached lots and lots of couples, lots and lots of singles. I've had lots of singles who became couples, right? And I've seen this, conversation of creating conscious love from every angle, every possible angle I've seen. And I've noticed a few patterns that I want to talk about today. And one of the patterns that I've noticed is that so many more relationships would take off. Like, someone that you're interested in and maybe they're interested in you and, there's a desire for this to go somewhere, but somehow it just implodes and it never takes off. So many more relationships would take off and actually become something if we were able to meet each other on like a human person-to-person level. I think one of the biggest obstacles to love, it's not that, people aren't into us or we're not into them. It's not that the potential isn't there. The potential is often there. I think more than most people realize, like people are like, oh, they just weren't into me, or, oh, something happened, and we make all kinds of excuses and all kinds of reasons. But what I want to say is the potential is often there. And it's our inability to navigate it in a powerful way, a way that leads to true, authentic connection that causes the relationship to collapse. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes there isn't potential, and I'll acknowledge that too. Right? Sometimes there isn't potential, but there is more potential than we usually think there is. And when a relationship collapses, let's say in the first 3 months, right, or in the first 6 months, and there was an interest and a desire for it to go somewhere, but it just collapsed somewhere along the way. It often wasn't because the relationship didn't have potential, but it was because we didn't know how to navigate it in a way that allowed us to truly connect on a heart-to-heart level, in a way that allowed us to see that we actually want the same things and that we could potentially create that together. We didn't know how to navigate these early power dynamics and we were trying to hold the upper hand over each other. And what often happens when we do that is two people are playing it cool, trying to hold the upper hand, maintain the power dynamic, not really let the other person in on where we are or what we want or what we see or what we desire. And when two people do that, there might be some initial attraction or spark of connection or interest. There might be that in the beginning, but inevitably what happens is when we continue to hold that upper hand and we continue to try to, fight in that power struggle, we reach a place, and it'll often happen at some point within the first 3 months, where the relationship just feels like it has nowhere to go. There's like a plateau that we reach where, okay, the initial spark and attraction and interest and chemistry could only get us so far. But as we go a month in or a couple of months in and nothing is deepening between us, we're not really reaching each other on a heart level. We're not able to touch each other in a meaningful way. We start to go, I don't know about this, or I don't know what, I don't know where this is going, or I don't know. It felt good in the beginning, but it doesn't feel good anymore. And I don't know if they really like me that much, or I don't know how I feel about them. And we never bridge that gap to make it past that initial phase. And so what we've got to learn, those of us who are seeking a conscious relationship. Now, some people just want to play the game, and if playing the game is good enough for you and you're good with casual encounters that last a week or a couple of months, and you just want to do that, then you don't really need to learn this. But if you want a conscious, long-term committed relationship, you need to learn how to operate outside of that game playing, outside of that power struggle, outside of always trying to keep the upper hand, and learn how to really touch someone and be touched by someone on a heart level, to where you can bridge that gap and see that, we ultimately want the same things here. And I think we could have that. I think we could be that for each other. And so, as I said earlier, I love this conversation. This is one of my absolute favorite things to talk about. I love teaching how to bridge that gap and how to form authentic, heartfelt connections that lead to conscious love. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I was sharing a little bit earlier that we're just finishing up our 7-day conscious love challenge. Today's actually day 7, so it's the final day. And there was a question that came in from one of the challenge participants over the last 7 days that I thought was a really powerful question, and I wanted to use it to kind of spark today's conversation on the podcast. And so this is what the person said. She said, I would like to learn how to communicate authentically without overthinking. I hear so many different perspectives on what men want and how to be or not to be, but it's my nature to show enthusiasm or text first when I like someone. And I hear that I shouldn't make it easy for them, or the idea that men like to hunt. And so I start to second guess myself and get insecure quickly if it's not reciprocated. And so for the ladies out there who might relate to this, and to any of the ladies who are listening live with me right now, if you relate to what I just read, just tap that heart a few times on the screen. I'm just curious who relates to this conversation. If you relate to that, just tap that heart a few times, right? I would like to learn how to communicate authentically without overthinking. And I hear so many different perspectives on what men want and how to be or not to be, and how to show enthusiasm or not to show too much enthusiasm. Yeah, I see a lot of hearts coming in right now. Right? I hear that I'm not supposed to make it easy for them, or men like to hunt, right? And first thing I want to say is there is some truth in some of this, right? So I want to point out what's true about this. Do men like to hunt? Yes, there's some truth in that. And oh yeah, I see the comment, or how you must stay in the feminine. Right? Yeah. So stay in the feminine. Like, how do we stay in the feminine and all this stuff? So I'm going to talk about all that today, because do men like to hunt? Yes, they do. And here's what I mean. Like, I don't even think when I say that, a lot of people really understand what that means. So let me just explain what that means when I say that men like to hunt. What a man wants to feel, how do I put this? It's like, When a woman is making herself too available to a man in the early stages. Now, in a long-term relationship, there are very different dynamics, but in the early stages, when a woman is making herself too available to a man, there's a tendency for him to undervalue her. And some of you might say, oh, that's fucked up. I don't like that. And maybe it's right. I'm not saying it's good or bad or right or wrong. I'm just saying there is something about her being not so easily available that makes him think, wow, this is a high value woman. And we could say that works both ways, right? I think women often feel the same way about a man. If a man makes himself overly available, if he's bending over backwards, he wants to see her every day, he's blowing up her phone all the time, she's going to think he's not that high value of a man. So I don't even think that it's that men like to hunt. I think there's a fundamental human thing where when we meet someone, we want to experience from them that they're a high value person. And what does that mean? It means they have a life. It means they have interests, they have hobbies, they have friendships, they have principles and priorities and things that matter to them. And they're not just constantly available for whatever I want, whenever I want it. It actually works both ways. So when we say men like to hunt, I think we're speaking into a deeper truth about human beings. Is it's not that men want to chase a woman all over town. Like I'll say as a man, when I was dating, if a woman tried to make me chase her all over town, I was like, this is bullshit. I'm not doing this. It wasn't like that. But what we want, and I think this goes both ways, it goes for men and women. What we want when we meet someone is we want to experience that, you know what? They have a life, they have commitments, they have priorities, they have things that matter to them. They have personal pride, right? They have a sense of self-worth and a sense of self-value that they're not bending over backwards to meet my every whim. And so let's actually, I know I said earlier that men like to hunt, and I was teeing up what I just said when I said that. But let's actually get rid of that. It's not that men like to hunt. It's that people want to experience a sense of high value from the person that they're dating. Now, if somebody texts you and you respond within 30 seconds every time they text, if somebody asks you out and or let's put it this way. If someone asks you out and they're like, oh yeah, let's check in this weekend. And then you don't hear from them for 4 days. And then they reach out to you Friday night and they're like, hey, are you available? And on a dime, you're available. That doesn't communicate high value. And so this isn't about making someone chase you or making someone hunt you. This is about presenting yourself as a high value person. And let me define what I mean when I say high value. What I mean when I say that is that you have a sense of self-respect. You have a sense of dignity. You have a sense of priorities in your life. You have a sense of things that are important to you. So there's a way that when you're genuinely, how do I put this? When you are living a life of importance, and that could look so many different ways to so many different people. I'm not saying that it needs to look any particular way for you. But when you are living a life of importance, there is going to be a natural thing that you are not always available to respond to a text message the moment it comes in. Right? I mean, think about your day right now. How many things are you going to do today that you wouldn't be available to respond to a text message from anyone as soon as it came in? You're going to be doing so many things today. Now, like me, for myself, like I'm on this podcast for 2 hours today. When I'm on this podcast, my phone's on Do Not Disturb. Nobody can reach me. This is just me living my life. If somebody texts me during these 2 hours, it's going to take an hour or so for me to respond. And that's not because I'm ignoring people or I'm playing some kind of game. That's because I have commitments. I have things that are important to me in my life. Right? After I get off this podcast, I'm going to take about 15 minutes to check my messages, check my emails, handle what needs to be handled. Then I'm going to go to the gym. That's going to be another hour and a half that I'm not available. Right? When I get up in the morning, I don't look at my phone or check my messages until a certain amount of time, because that's my time where I meditate, I focus, I get started on my day, I journal, I prep my material, like I do whatever I need to do. That's my time. So I'm not available at that time. And I see a comment, smartwatches, people are literally available 24/7 though. Okay, well, if you choose to be. But I'm going to say, if you are available for people 24/7, there's something you're missing in your life. There's a level of commitment to yourself and carving out time for yourself, carving out time for your commitments. And that is, I mean, I'm not going to make a judgment about that. You can do that if you want to, but it's not the most effective way to live. Speak to any productivity expert, and they will tell you that blocking out blocks of time in your day where you're focused on one thing and you're not constantly being distracted by different notifications. So like, that's a level of self-respect that I have for myself, where I'm not just available for anyone, anytime. So there's a certain level of living your life in a way where you have commitments, you have times in which you are not just available for anything anybody wants. And this is not game playing. This is not maintaining some kind of upper hand or some kind of power struggle. This is not pretending to be anything you're not. And yeah, I might, if I'm working, I carve out blocks of time where I work when I'm creating content or when I'm, putting material together for a program. I carve out blocks of time where I work. And sometimes I might see a notification pop up on my phone or my computer, but I don't reply to it right away. So even if you have a smartwatch, it's like, okay, I saw the notification, but I'm not replying to it right away. Why? Because I'm doing this right now. And so there's a way of living with boundaries, and boundaries equate to self-respect. I've often said that if you want someone to respect you, create boundaries with them. And this whole conversation that we're talking about right now could be condensed down to the idea of boundaries. I have boundaries around my time. I have boundaries around my availability. I have boundaries around what I'm willing to accept or what I'm not willing to accept. So I was talking about earlier that if someone says, let's get together this weekend, and you don't hear from them for 4 days, and then they reach out to you Friday night and they're like, hey, are you ready? You want to go out tonight? And you make yourself available for them on a last minute thing. That is low value behavior. And some people might say, well, what if I'm genuinely free though? What if I'm genuinely free? Well, maybe you are genuinely free in the sense that maybe all you plan to do was sit down and watch a movie or something like that. Right? So maybe you were already free. But there's still a space for you to have boundaries. And a line of personal respect might be that if you reach out to me last minute, whether I'm free or not, my boundary is that I'm not available. Because I don't move when people tell me to move. I don't drop everything and go out when someone tells me to. There's a certain line of self-respect that when people want my time, when people want space in my life, they need to honor it by prioritizing it in their life. I'm going to say that again. There's a line of self-respect that I have that if somebody wants time and space in my life, they have to honor it by prioritizing it in their life. Thanks for tuning in today. And if you enjoy the Conscious Love Show, there are a few things you can do with just a few seconds of your time that will really support us in being able to continue bringing these messages to you every single week, completely free of charge. The first thing you can do is give us a 5-star rating on one of the major podcast platforms. The two most popular for this show are Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but you can leave a rating on any platform where you listen to this podcast. And if you'd be willing to take just an extra moment, you can write a few words about the show and share with people how it's touched you and the difference it's made in your life. That will go a very long way in supporting our show. Possibly the biggest thing you can do to support the show is share it with someone that you know can benefit from it. If you get a lot out of it, it's very likely that a friend or loved one of yours will too. And I appreciate it so much when people share the show. If you wanted to take the extra step, you could post a link to today's show on your stories or socials and help get the word out in that way. If you'd be willing to take just one of these steps today, I would appreciate that so much. And I want to say thank you in advance for caring about the show and being willing to support it. Thanks again for listening today. Your presence here means everything to me, and I hope you continue joining me each week for many years to come. Lots of love, and let's get back to the show. I'm not somebody's last-minute option. And if you treat me like a last-minute option, I'm not going to be available. And that's not game playing. That's not manipulation. That's self-respect. And the truth is, for me, like, I don't know about any of you, but I'm never available last minute. And if I have a Friday night off, like I have plans. Like I'm planning to sit down and watch a movie, right? Like I'm planning to make a nice meal and enjoy my nice meal out on my deck. And like I have plans, even if my plans are just with me. Or now I'm married, so my plans are usually me and my wife. Plans with yourself are still plans. And if you're like, and I think that's even an important thing to touch on, right? Is there's a level of self-respect where I not only honor my commitments to other people, I honor my commitments to myself. Right? I don't just honor my commitments to other people. I also honor the commitments I make to myself. And so if I have a Friday night available and I'm planning to sit down and get in my PJs and watch a movie and make myself a nice meal or whatever I'm doing, that's a plan that I'm keeping. And there's a boundary in place there that my self-respect says that I don't allow myself to be treated like a last-minute option. If somebody wants space in my life, they need to prioritize me in their life. And so what I'm getting at here is when we talk about having the upper hand in dating, it's not about holding the upper hand over someone else. It's not about being manipulative or playing games. It's about a way in which you operate in relationships. Right? There's a way in which you operate in relationships in which you expect to be treated a certain way. You expect your time and your attention and your effort and your energy to be honored. And someone expecting you to be available on a whim last minute is not honoring you. That is blatant disrespect for anything you might have going on in your life. Someone calling you up at 2 a.m. and saying, hey, can I come over? That's not honoring you. That is blatant disrespect for your time and your space in your life. Someone expecting you to respond to a text message within 5 minutes of sending it is not honoring you. And most people don't expect that until you demonstrate that behavior, and then they come to expect it. So I want to address, someone posted a question here. I think it's a great question. Can you address the adrenaline that causes that immediate need to reply and how to work with healing the compulsion? That's a beautiful question. right? So you get a text message or you get an invitation out last minute. And what immediately happens is there's a fear that if I don't respond, or if I don't go out with them, or if I don't give them what they want, they're not going to like me, or I'm going to lose them. Or maybe like someone texts you last minute and like, hey, can you go out tonight? And you're like, I know I should really say no because I know it's not really respectful what they're asking me to do. But I really like this person. I really want something to happen with them. And I feel like if I do go out tonight, there's an opportunity for me to show them how great I am and for them to really start to respect me afterwards. Or this rush of adrenaline that you get when you get a text message from someone and you get excited and you just can't wait to interact with them. Now, the adrenaline that you're speaking about here in this question is insecurity, right? It's insecurity. And it's this feeling that it's really rooted in a feeling that I'm not enough, right? Because think about the underlying impression there that who I am, the pleasure of getting to know me as a human being, the privilege of someone having me in their life is not enough in and of itself. In order to be enough, I need to be available for them on a minute, or I need to make myself available last minute, right? Like there's an underlying belief system that if I operate in this relationship with reasonable boundaries, with the level of self-respect, if I command respect from this person and from this relationship, that they're not going to like me. And so what ends up happening is that fear drives me to constantly lower my value. And every time the fear drives me to lower my value, I am teaching them and demonstrating to them that I'm not a high value person. Now, I want to say, I know all of you are high value people. I would never question that for a second. I'm not saying that anybody is genuinely a low value person. But when we operate from fear and insecurity and wounding, we demonstrate low value behavior. And so in that moment when you get that text, and I want to be clear, like sometimes you may genuinely be available and it's okay to respond immediately sometimes. Like, and I'll just share from my personal life, right? Someone might text me and I might respond immediately because I'm genuinely available. And then they reply back and then I respond immediately because I'm genuinely available. And then they reply back and I won't respond for 2 hours after that. And the reason is because while we were going through that interaction, we were going back and forth for a moment, and then I had to get on a call or I had to do a podcast or I had to focus on something else, and I put my phone down. So I'm not saying that we're never, ever available. But what I'm saying is we honor our commitments to ourselves. Right? If I have a block of time scheduled to work on something and I need to get this thing done because I have a program to run next week or whatever, and this is honoring myself and my students and my commitments and everything, I'm not going to compromise that. What I need to get done, what I need to focus on, what matters most to me, I'm not going to compromise that out of my fear of not getting someone's approval. And so I'm not saying that you never respond immediately. But what I'm saying is that if you're at the gym and you're doing your workout and you're like, this is my block of time for myself where I'm doing my workout or I'm doing my yoga or I'm doing whatever. And this is my block of time that I've given to myself. And then your crush texts you or the person you're dating texts you. And you feel this compulsion to reply immediately. What I would invite you to practice in that moment is putting it away, saying, I'm at the gym, I'm focused. This is my time for myself right now, right? This is my time every day that I get to focus on myself and my self-care and my fitness and be there for me, right? So I'm going to put that down. I'm going to respond later. And as I work out or as I write my book or whatever it is that you're doing, Whatever it is that you're focused on right then that you're not willing to take time away from, I want you to notice that feeling in your body. You see, this is where the healing happens, is when we notice the fear that's present in our body. We notice that anxiety or that adrenaline, as you put it, right? That rush, that feeling that is really rooted in insecurity. We notice the thoughts associated with that. We say, oh, if I don't respond, are they going to text someone else? Are they going to lose interest? I need to constantly be available for them to make sure I don't lose their interest. Right? All of those insecure thoughts and feelings. And rather than escaping those thoughts and feelings by replying to the person, you're going to stay focused on what you're focused on, and you're going to be with those thoughts and feelings. And you're going to start to affirm things to yourself like, you know what? If they can't respect the fact that I was at the gym when they texted me and I waited until I got home to reply, if they can't respect that, then this isn't someone I want in my life. When they text you last minute on Friday night, they're like, hey, can you go out tonight? And you feel that rush like, oh, I should really go out because if I don't, they're going to lose interest or I'm going to lose my opportunity to impress them, make them like me. But you know it's disrespectful behavior and you know you shouldn't play into disrespectful behavior. Then you say, no, you know what? It's Friday night. I'm going to relax tonight. I've had a long week. I want to take some time for myself. I would love to see you sometime soon. How about tomorrow night? Or how about Sunday night? Or how about one night during the week? And what you're doing is you're communicating the standards under which they need to operate with you. And so what starts to happen for us is we start to learn to be with the uncomfortable feelings, right? We start to learn to be with the anxiety and the fear and the insecurity that drives us to compromise our own value. We start to affirm to ourselves that if this person cannot show me respectful behavior, if they cannot honor my reasonable boundaries, if they cannot see that getting to know me as a human being is enough of a reward without me compromising my boundaries on top of it to appease them, if they don't get that, then this isn't someone I want in my life. And what we start to do is we start to consciously release the people in the relationships that are not meant for us. And I want to say this, a lot of us who feel like we're stuck in a pattern, a repetitive pattern of chasing love and always coming empty-handed, right? And we end up in one relationship and another relationship and we date and we do all this stuff, but it never leads to anything. One of the things that we may not be doing is learning to let go of what's not meant for us. We've developed such a habit and such a pattern of chasing love that we've never learned to really release and let go of the things that are not meant for us. And we continue to operate in low value patterns. And we continue to attract people who see us as low value. And this is the thing, when we operate in low value patterns and we meet a high value person, someone who's looking for a high value partner, they see us operating in those low value patterns and it causes them to lose interest. Now, I've talked so far a lot about self-respect and boundaries and keeping the upper hand, so to speak. And when I talk about keeping the upper hand, again, I want to be really clear. I'm not talking about that in a way of holding power over someone, like a game playing or a manipulation. But what I'm talking about is holding yourself in a place of respect and requiring that someone else honor that. Right? That I am not entertaining anyone in my life unless they can appreciate me and appreciate my boundaries. Now, I want to talk about the other side of the coin, which is vulnerability and authenticity. Because to forge a genuine, heartfelt connection with someone, it can't just be all boundaries. So there's got to be a balance of, yes, I'm not available anytime you want for anything you want. I'm not available last minute. I'm not going to respond to every text message you send me within 30 seconds. I'm not going to bend over backwards, please you, and try to be everything you want. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be myself. And you're going to have to appreciate me for me, and you're going to have to honor my boundaries. But alongside of that is a willingness to be open and genuinely be vulnerable and genuinely connect with someone. So I often say, and I say this for men and women, it doesn't matter which one's which. I say this from whoever does it first is great. If you go out on a first date with someone and you have a great time with them, text them immediately after the date, tell them you had a great time and tell them you want to see them again. Make yourself emotionally and vulnerably available to people. Now, when I tell you I like you and I want to see you again and I had a great time and, I'm looking forward to reconnecting. When I tell you that, that doesn't mean that if you text me last minute on a Friday night, I'm going to drop everything to go see you. My boundaries and my self-respect is still intact. Nothing has changed there. But just because I have boundaries and I have self-respect doesn't mean that I'm not vulnerable. Doesn't mean that I'm not emotionally available. And this is the thing. Everybody goes to one extreme or the other. Either we bend over backwards and are constantly available and we have really low value behavior, or we become completely invulnerable, completely unavailable. Everybody goes from one extreme to the other. Neither one of them works. But there is a place in the middle where we have boundaries, we have self-respect, and we are emotionally available. I often say you can say this on a first date, and you don't have to. You can say it on a second date or a third date, but it is totally okay to say it on a first date. To say to someone when you're sitting across the table and, if you're getting rapport and it's flowing and there's good conversation, it's totally okay to say to someone, I just want to be honest about this before we get too far ahead of ourselves, that, I'm really looking for something real, something long-term. I'm looking for a life partner. I'm looking for someone I can grow old with, someone I can have a family with, someone whatever, right? Like that's what I'm looking for in my life. And I'm having a really great time tonight. And you seem like a wonderful person and I'm really enjoying getting to know you. And, I wanted to put that out there because before we see each other again, or before we take it any further, I just wanted to be honest with you about where I am. That is totally appropriate for a first date. And a lot of people think that's desperate. Like, oh, if I tell someone that up front, how desperate do I look? I want everybody to hear this. There is nothing desperate about knowing what you want, being clear about it, and owning it. There is nothing desperate about that. That is actually the opposite of desperate. That is somebody speaking from worthiness. That is somebody speaking from high value. That is somebody speaking from, I know what I want and I know that I deserve to have it. That is somebody operating from the certainty that if you can at least be on board or entertain the same things that I want, I'm willing to let you go. There is nothing desperate about that. You know what's desperate? Pretending that you don't want that, or being dishonest or withholding that information because you're afraid if you say it too soon, the person's going to lose interest. That's desperate. And there is such a misunderstanding about this. Because if you look at what is underneath all of this kind of misleading, game playing, beating around the bush, withholding type behavior, what's underneath all of that is a fear that I'm not worthy of love. Nobody's going to want me. And I need to play some kind of game and dance around and tiptoe around things in order to get someone to like me. And then once I get them hooked, then I can be honest with them about what I want. And underneath all of that is the feeling that I'm not enough. Me being who I am, me being honest about what I want, me asking for what I want, me letting people go who aren't for me is not going to work for me. I need to bend over backwards and pretzel myself inside out in order to get somebody to love me, because who I am is not enough. That's desperate. And so there's this line that we walked where on the one side of it, we have boundaries, we have self-respect, we have standards under which we're operating with people, standards that people need to respect if they want time and space and energy from me. And on the other side of it, we have this beautiful vulnerability where I'm honest about what I want, where I ask for what I want, where I tell someone how much I like them. You know, it is totally okay. It is totally okay after a second date or a third date or after a few times of meeting someone to say something, and you could say it over a text message or you could say it on the phone or you could say it in person, but to say something like, you know, I just want to be honest with you. I've really enjoyed these few dates that we've been on. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. You seem like a wonderful person. And, you know, this is the kind of relationship that I would really like to see this go somewhere. That is totally okay. That is totally appropriate. It's actually beautiful that you can be that courageous and that vulnerable. And when you develop the courage to be that way with someone, what you're doing is you're opening up a space for the kind of relationship you want. And the fear is like, oh, well, what if I like them and they don't feel the same way about me? Well, that will happen sometimes. I mean, if we look at it, that's the only reason we don't do it. Right? That's the only reason we don't do it, is because we're afraid that it's not going to be reciprocated. And I think this fear of rejection or this fear of things not being reciprocated, that is probably the biggest obstacle to making a real connection with someone. And I want to say that's something that we've got to learn to integrate. I mean, and I'll like speak for myself. This was a personal transformation for me when I was single. And I want to say, like, if I had not broken through this before I met my wife, I wouldn't have the marriage I have today. Because breaking through this was essential for everything that I needed to create the relationship I have with my wife. I would not have been able to show up for her and show up in this relationship the way that I did if I had not broken through this first. And I got to a place with myself where I was just like, you know what? It's okay for me to like anyone I like. It's okay for me to be attracted to anyone that I'm attracted to. It's okay for me to express that. It's okay for me to show interest. It's okay for me to be emotionally available. It's okay for all of that. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is they don't feel the same way. And you know what? That happened a lot to me. I mean, I can't count how many times I got rejected. Like, it was a lot. But something that was so beautiful about it was after the first couple of times where I just really was vulnerable and really was honest. And they were like, oh, I like you as a friend, or, oh, I don't see you that way, or, oh, I don't feel the same. And I don't think I want to see, you know, whatever they said. It hurt. Like it hurt. I'm not going to say I didn't feel it, but you know what? It hurt less the second time than it did the first time. And it hurt less the third time than it did the second time. And it hurt less the fourth time than it did the third time. And it hurt less the fifth time than it did the fourth time. Because every time I realized that, you know what, it's not that big of a deal. There are 7 billion people in the world. Not every single one of them is going to like me. And I don't need every one of them to like me. And you know what? Like, yeah, I got rejected or I got turned down or whatever. And you know what? I'm still alive. I'm still breathing, like life fucking goes on. It didn't kill me. And see, most of us think if we get rejected, it would be such a crushing blow to our self-worth that we wouldn't recover from it. I found that the opposite happened for me. The more comfortable I got with rejection and the more willing I was to embrace it and feel it, the more my self-worth increased. It's counterintuitive, but this is how it works. The more comfortable you get with facing rejection and integrating that experience and understanding that someone else's opinion of you does not define your worth and value, the more comfortable you get with that, the more your self-worth increases. And I want to say, by the time I met my wife, I had worked so much with this and my self-worth had increased to such a level that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was worthy of a high-value woman like her. Without a doubt, I was certain of that. And it didn't mean that she was going to want me or she was going to feel the same way I did. It didn't mean that at all. But what it meant was if she didn't, someone of equal or greater value would. And that was something that I created in myself by my willingness to face this. And so, vulnerability, your willingness to be vulnerable, your willingness to be emotionally available, your willingness to speak about what you want and ask for what you want from people, your willingness to show interest. That is such an essential piece of it. And again, I think this is where we get lost because we become so desperate for someone that we consistently operate in low value behavior, replying to their every message, being available last minute, bending over backwards to be who and what they want us to be, hoping they'll like us. Or we switch completely to the other extreme and we're not available at all. We maintain this like absolute upper hand over someone. We don't give them anything without getting it from them first. And here's the thing, when you operate in consistently low value behavior, and what by low value behavior, what I mean is, again, I've used many examples today, but replying to their message every time within seconds, like bending over backwards to please and make them like you, making yourself available last minute on a whim, and all these kinds of things. I think we know what this is when I talk about it. When you operate that way, there are only two things that can happen. One, you're going to find people who need that kind of ego validation. So they're looking for someone who will be that way with them because they need that ego validation. And they're just going to use you to validate their own wounded ego. That's the first thing that can happen. The second thing that can happen is you're going to meet someone who actually is a high value person themselves. And they're looking for a partner who is also high value, and they're not looking to manipulate anybody. They're looking to connect authentically and deeply with someone. And then they see you doing all of this behavior, and they're like, this person isn't real. I can't trust them. They have no self-respect. And they're not going to manipulate you or hold power over you or treat you poorly. But what they're going to do is just be like, I don't feel the connection I'm looking for here. I don't feel like we're on the same level. Now, when you operate from the other extreme, which is I have like ultra boundaries and ultra standards, and I'm never vulnerable and I never express interest and I never make myself available. The relationship has to be completely on my terms. When we operate from the other extreme, what happens is the exact opposite, right? Either we meet someone who is consistently low value, and then we hold power over them to boost our own egos, which is what a lot of people do. Or we find someone who is high value, and we expect them to put in all this work And they're just going to be like, you know what? Like, I really try with this person and you know, they seem like a cool person, but I really try with them and it doesn't get me anywhere. And I'm like, I'm tired of it. And they're going to get exhausted. So this middle way, standards and self-respect, boundaries, plus vulnerability. I like you. I really like you. I want a long-term committed relationship. I would love to see where this goes. You seem like the kind of person that I would really want to be with. And I'm not pretending it's any other way. I'm not hiding it. I'm not putting up any false pretenses. But it doesn't matter how much I like you or how much potential I see here. You're still going to have to show me respect. See, a lot of us, the moment we like someone, we lose our self-respect. And we start doing whatever we can to get them. And then when we feel like we're above somebody, when we feel like we're maybe more attractive or more successful or whatever the standard is that we're using to place ourselves above that person on an ego level, then we operate with kind of these ultra high standards. And I just want to say, if you're operating in that dynamic of like putting yourself above or below other people, you're never going to create conscious love that way. That is not the environment or the context in which conscious love is created. Conscious love is created not when I place myself above or below other people, but when I see myself and everyone else as equal. I'm not trying to hold power over anybody, but I'm also not letting anybody hold any power over me. Me and every other person on the planet are equal. That doesn't mean I'm attracted to everyone. It also doesn't mean everyone's attracted to me. That's part of the equality, right? We're all equal and we're attracted to different things. Some people I'm attracted to, some people are attracted to me. Sometimes I'm attracted to someone, they're not attracted to me, and vice versa. And sometimes two people are attracted to each other. And we're all equal. We're all on the same field here, right? The level of interest or attraction between people doesn't change the equality. The equality is fundamental. And because I see everybody as equal, I treat everyone the same, right? So I'm not pandering to some people when I think they're above me and manipulating other people when I think they're below me. I treat everybody the same. Every single person has to meet the same standards of self-respect, and every single person gets absolute honesty about what I want and how I feel. Another part of this is that if I don't really like someone, I'm honest with them about it. Or if I like them as a friend, I'm honest with them about it, right? I'm not like some of us do this thing where I'm not really into the person, but I'm just going to kind of act like I'm into the person and keep them around. And maybe, you know, I've heard it said, and I'm not saying this is an absolute truth, but I've heard it said that guys get friend zoned and women get sex zoned. Again, that's not an absolute truth, but that does happen, right? So women are like, well, I'm just going to use this guy as a friend and I'll kind of pretend that I like him and keep him around as a friend and he'll give me emotional validation. And men are like, well, I'm just going to pretend like I like her and I'm going to keep her around for sex and I'll get physical validation from her. It's the same thing, no, whether you're doing it either way, right? But a high value person doesn't do either of those things. We're honest about when we like someone and we're also honest about when we don't like someone. So if it's like, hey, you know, you seem wonderful. I'd love to see you as a friend or maybe spend some time together in that way, but I'm not romantically attracted to you and I don't want to pursue any kind of romantic relationship. Or if we don't want to genuinely see the person as a friend, we just say to them, listen, it's been wonderful getting to know you. You know, I've appreciated your time and you seem great in a lot of ways. You're not what I'm looking for. and I don't want to take this any further. And if they're like, well, can we be friends? It's like, no, honestly, I don't really want a friendship. And that might seem harsh. That might seem cold. Let me tell you what, that is so much kinder than being dishonest with them and leading them to believe something else. It is so much kinder. And so this is the most authentic way to do it. It's the only way that leads to true, genuine, heartfelt connection between two people. There's no other way to approach this. And it's scary. It's scary because you're like wide open. You're not operating behind any pretense that allows you to protect yourself. You're wide open. But as you learn to operate this way, and as I said earlier, if I hadn't learned to be open like that, I wouldn't have been ready for my wife when I met her. And yeah, I had to go through quite a few difficult situations, and I had to be authentic with a lot of people who weren't authentic with me. Right? There were times when I would be spending some time with a woman and I would be really into it, and I would think she felt the same way, and I would tell her that I really liked her and I wanted to see it go somewhere, and she would say, yeah, I feel the same way. But then she would never allow it to go somewhere. And then within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, she would start dating someone else. And I would have to come to terms with the fact that she abused my authenticity and used me for emotional validation until she found someone she was really attracted to. And that sucks. Like, that doesn't feel good. But it also didn't kill me. And this is what I want to say, because so many of us are like, well, I'm afraid to give away the upper hand. I'm afraid to let someone know how I feel about them or let them know that I like them. Because if I do, they're going to hold that over me, just like I just described. Right? I let someone know I really like them, and then they manipulate that and they hold that over me. Well, this is something I say to all my clients. The best way to find out someone's true character is to give them the opportunity to hold some power over you. You want to know how they really feel? Be honest with them about how you feel. And see what they do with it. Because I also had a lot of women over the years, maybe not a lot, but a handful of women over the years, that when I was honest with them about how I felt, they would be honest with me in return, and they would say, listen, you're a wonderful person, but I don't feel that way about you. And I'm not looking for that. And what I found was those were really honorable women. And by the way, I know I'm talking about my personal experiences with women, but the exact same thing is true of men. The exact same thing is true. There were women who would manipulate that power that I gave them, and there were women who would honor my vulnerability and my honesty. And the exact same is true of men. I know some of you, especially the ladies who are listening, and maybe you've been hurt by men in the past. But the exact same is true of men. You're going to find that when you are honest, there are men who will manipulate that honesty and use it against you. And there are men who will absolutely honor your vulnerability. And you want to find out what kind of man you're dealing with? Give him that power and see how he uses it. You see, nothing reveals someone's character more than whether they're willing to abuse power or not. And this is why I say, give away the upper hand. because I'm not interested in maintaining some kind of power struggle. I'm interested in an authentic connection. And the fastest way I can connect authentically is to find out what capacity you have to honor my vulnerability, to find out what capacity you have to respect the power that I give you in our relationship. And if you give someone some power and they get a big ego and they start making all kinds of crazy expectations of you, then you step back and you go, oh, I see what you're doing with that. Well, now I've decided I don't want you because you just revealed your hand and you seemed so nice and you seemed so charming and you seemed like such a great person. But the moment I gave you the upper hand, you tried to abuse it. And now I got the ick. And now I've decided that I want nothing with you. And if they thought they had the upper hand, they're going to find out real soon how much they don't have the upper hand. When you turn around and say, you know what, like I thought I liked you, but after what I've seen in these last couple of weeks, I've lost all interest. The way you've been behaving ever since I was vulnerable with you has been disgusting to me. And I'm no longer interested at all. If they thought they had the upper hand and they thought they could hold that over you, they're going to find out real quickly how much they don't have the upper hand when they come face to face with your standards and your self-respect. What I'm describing here is the most authentic way of dating, the most vulnerable way, and the only way that can lead to true conscious connection. And so I want to challenge everybody who hears this, whether you're live with me today, whether you're listening to the podcast, I want to challenge everybody who hears this. If you feel like you're stuck in a cycle where you're dating and dating and dating and dating and dating, and things aren't going anywhere, you're not really making authentic connections with anyone, look for all the little games you play. Look for all the little aspects of inauthenticity, and some of them might be very subtle. But when you find all those little places within yourself where you're not being fully authentic, you're not being fully genuine, you're not being fully available, or you're not really honoring your own standards and your own boundaries, find those little places and make a commitment to yourself to cut them out and to be completely authentic. And see what shifts for you. It might not happen immediately. It might not happen instantly. But as you make that commitment to yourself and you start to show up that way with every single person, you start to show up that way with every single person, I'll bet any amount of money on this. Watch how all the relationships in your life start to transform. And inauthentic people fall out of your life, and authentic people just gravitate right in. All right, so I'm going to close out with that. I want to open up now for some questions. So I'm going to go back through here. I'm going to see any questions that we have come in. If you have questions, go ahead, drop them in the chat. I want to just make a note real quick here. So this question is from Jensen Neal. What about when we are supporting someone who is struggling? Is it okay to be more immediately available, or is it codependent? Now, I said this earlier, but I didn't really speak into it, so I just want to come back to it. The dynamics that I'm talking about here are different when we're in a committed relationship. You know, if my wife says to me, hey, do you want to go out tonight, Friday night? I'm not going to be like, no, you need to schedule with me in advance, right? So like, I want to say that there are different dynamics in a relationship, but some of the rules apply and some of them don't. I will say, like, even with my wife, and she knows this, like if I haven't a couple of hours that are blocked off for work and I'm not paying attention to my phone, I may not respond right away. Although, if I'm at the gym or something, like, this is my wife, it's not someone I'm dating. It's, we've been together for 8 years. So, if I do see something come in, and especially if it's of an urgent nature, I may be more inclined to reply right away. And if I have a block of time when I'm not looking at my phone and I'm trying to focus on something, then I'm not going to be able to respond right away. Right. So some of the rules apply in more of a committed relationship. Some of them don't. I was speaking specifically today about when we're dating somebody. But I want to speak into your question. What about when we are supporting someone who's struggling? Now, if I've been in a relationship with someone for years and they're struggling, I mean, I'm going to be there for them. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be able to be there 24/7 or that I should be there 24/7. But I'm going to be there for them. If somebody, say, like, I start dating someone and they're struggling and it's very early on, I mean, honestly, in most of those cases, and there might be a few exceptions, but in most of those cases, what I'm going to say is it's not right. Like the timing is not right. They might be a wonderful person. They might have a lot of potential, but if they're in a place where they're struggling in their life to a serious degree, and I need to be their support system right off the bat, they might be a wonderful person, but the timing for our relationship is probably not right. Like, in the beginning, and the reason I say this is because if you accept that kind of stuff from the very beginning, if you start dating someone and you immediately become their support structure, yes, you are setting the relationship up for a codependent dynamic. And you are setting yourself up, honestly, potentially for like abuse down the road. In the beginning, what we need are two people who are stable in their lives and who are able to build a relationship without really needing anything from the other person. Now, look, as we merge our lives together, as we go deeper and deeper, when we get married, when we share a home, yes, we need more from each other. But that's something we grow into with someone. It's not something that we should expect from the very start of a relationship. If someone is expecting you to be their support system from the very start of a relationship, yes, that's starting the relationship off on a very codependent dynamic. And it's, again, as I said, setting yourself up for like abuse down the road. The relationship needs to start from a place of independence. And as we're both two independent beings who have two full lives, where we're not really looking to get anything from each other, more we're looking to what we can give and what we can offer each other. And as our relationship grows over the years, we move from being independent to more interdependent, not codependent, right? But interdependent, where we learn to rely on each other for things and we learn to support each other and we become a part of each other's support structure. Your partner should never really be your entire support structure. Right? Like, I have a therapist, I have a men's group, I have things in my life that serve as a support structure because my partner is not my entire support structure. So we have an interdependence that we grow into in our relationship. But yeah, it's not codependent. So look, like, my wife went through cancer a few years ago. Like, I was her primary support structure through that. And she had others too. It wasn't only me. She had a coach, she had doctors, right? It wasn't only me, but I was her primary support structure through that. But that happened several years into our relationship. Our relationship didn't start with that. So I want to say that, yeah, like, I think for today's conversation, when we're talking about getting to know someone in the early stages and you're dating someone, and of course, there may be some exceptions. I'm not saying this is always how it is. But generally, you don't want to be someone's support structure in the beginning. They need to have their stuff together. And you go into the relationship with what you want to give each other rather than what you need from each other. So, great question. Thank you for asking. Awesome question. Thank you. Okay, this question is from Marguerite Berry. She says, finding it difficult to meet people, 40 years and would like to have a family, feel under pressure and running out of time. First thing I want to say is just, I hear you and I feel you on that. And that's very real. I'm not a woman, so obviously I can't personally know what that's like or relate to that. But I can relate to it in that my wife is 42 and we're trying to have a child right now. And we're going through that whole thing. So I hear you and I'm very sympathetic to that. What I want to say is that in this situation, and I've coached a lot of women going through this situation, there's got to be a level of surrender, a level of being willing to accept whatever may come. And honestly, I think that even if you were 20 or 30, I would still give you that same advice. I know there's a different dynamic here because you're 40 and your window of having children is running out of time. And I again, am very sympathetic to that. But the urgency and desperation to get into a relationship never leads to anything good. And whether you're 30 years old and you're doing it because your sister got married and all your friends got married and you feel like you've missed the bus or whatever, or you're doing it because you're 40 and your window for having children is running out of time, like whatever it is, the urgency and desperation never leads to anything good. And so the only way to get out of that urgency and desperation mindset is to surrender and accept whatever might come. Now you have options, and I've coached, several women your age who chose to have a child on their own because having a child was that important to them. And they didn't have a partner and they said, you know what, I'm not going to miss this in my life. Like, this is what I want and I'm going to do it. And just my wife, for example, like she and I have talked about this, and, she was like in her mid 30s when we met. So she was considering that too. And she said to herself, like, you know what, what's important to me is to have a child with a partner and to have it be a family and to have it be the right partner. And so my wife said to herself that, if I meet the right partner and it works, wonderful. If it doesn't, I'm willing to accept that too. But I don't just want to have a child by myself. I want to have a partner and a family, and that's what matters to me. And so that's the decision she made. And there's no right or wrong. Like it's all valid. But what I want to touch on here is, you said like you feel like you're running out of time, and I really hear you when you say that. The feeling of running out of time and trying to make something happen fast because you're running out of time, and the anxiety that creates and the desperation that creates, it causes you to lower your value. It causes you to subject yourself to less than ideal situations. It causes you to compromise on things that you really shouldn't compromise on. It causes you to choose partners that really you probably shouldn't choose. And it actually slows the process. I know we think that when I feel like I'm running out of time and I feel anxious about it and I'm desperate and I'm trying to make it happen, we think that we're speeding up the process, but we're actually slowing it down. Because what we end up doing is spinning our wheels in a bunch of situations with a bunch of different people that we're never going to work out anyway. And that desperation and that feeling that we're running out of time is driving us. And again, you could be 40, you could be 30. People experience this at different stages in their lives. People get into their 50s and they start doing it because I'm going to die alone if I don't meet someone soon, right? So there are all different reasons for it. But no matter what the reason is that's driving it, the fact remains the same, is it ends up ultimately slowing you down. Where if you were to really say, you know what, I trust whatever outcome. I surrender, I accept whatever outcome. But I want to be with the person who's right for me, not the person I just got with and made it happen because I'm desperate and running out of time. And you remain discerning and you remain patient. and you remain intentional, that actually accelerates your process. It might seem like less is happening because maybe you're walking away from more relationships than you actually get into. And you might look back and say, if only I had, if I hadn't walked away from that, or I hadn't walked away from that, or maybe I should have just settled with that person so I could have a family. Like, your mind will do all kinds of things. But the fastest way to get there is from a state of contentment and patience and presence and intentionality about what you truly want. Allowing desperation to drive you never leads to anything good. Now, I'm really sensitive about this. I know this is a sensitive topic. And as I said, I'm going through this with my wife. I've coached so many clients in similar situations. I really hear you. And I know what a real thing this is. And I'm saying this because I know that this is what's going to serve you most. So sending love to you. I wish you the absolute best. I hope you can find a place within yourself where you find peace in whatever decision you make, and you trust whatever outcome comes your way, and sending you so much love. And thank you for the question. Thank you so much. Okay, this question is from Shelly ZW. How do you navigate the wounded masculine who has a mother wounding, who will readily receive your vulnerability, but unable to also show up vulnerably? That's a great question. And, I think like at a certain point, you've got to come to terms with what are you willing to accept or not. I'd have a lot of nuance that I'd like to ask here. Like, well, to what degree is he vulnerable? What degree is he not? What do you want to see more of from him that you're not seeing? Like, I might ask you some of those questions, but what I would just say, all I can say here is that you've got to ask for what you want. So you might have a conversation with him that says, listen, I really love the way that you hold space for my vulnerability. I really, really do. And, it makes me feel so safe and so comfortable in this relationship. And, when I think about the kind of relationship that I want to have, I don't want that vulnerability to just be one way, but I want it to go both ways. And I want to be able to experience that from you too. And, is there a way that we could be more open with each other? Is there a way that we could talk about X or Y or Z? Is there a way that you could share with me some of what I want to know, whatever those things might be? And just see where that leads you. I think the most important thing here is ask for what you want. If the person has already demonstrated that they can hold a safe space for your vulnerability, that's half the battle. So ask for what you want and see what roadblocks you come up against when you ask for what you want. And if he's like, I just can't share, ask why. Right. And maybe you say, what if we worked with a therapist or a counselor? What if we got some support in navigating through these things so we could really get to know each other on a heart level, right? That might be a next step. I think if you've met someone who can hold space for your vulnerability, that's a huge first step. And knowing that you have that safety to ask and communicate in that way is wonderful. The next step is to consciously invite him into the relationship that you want. And he may be able to step into that with you, and he may not. And at a certain point, you're going to have to come to a place where you say, can I accept him as he is? And the answer is going to either be yes or it's going to be no. So that's what I can offer on that one. Thank you so much for the question, Shelly. Sending love. Beautiful question. Thank you. Okay, this question is from Carrie Beckner. When dealing with a subconsciously wounded person that you can't legally get rid of as a co-parent, is the most respecting way to handle communication, or what is the most self-respecting way to handle communication? Hold on. Is to protect vulnerability. Okay, got it. I see your question. Okay. When dealing with a subconsciously wounded person that you can't legally get rid of as a co-parent, is the most self-respecting way to handle communication to protect vulnerability. Got it. So you're basically saying in this relationship, because this person is wounded and because they're not responsible, do I limit my vulnerability with this person in order to protect and respect myself? And I would say yes, honestly. So not everybody is deserving of your vulnerability. And just because I was saying earlier, like when we're dating, the most important thing is to be vulnerable. I also said that, if you express your vulnerability with someone and they use it to hold power over you or to manipulate you, right? Then you withdraw the vulnerability. Then you say, I handed this to you. I see what you did with that. No more. I'm not doing it anymore. Right. So it'd be the same thing here, right? This is a person you've been in a relationship with. They're co-parenting with you. They're wounded. They're not able to honor your vulnerability. They're not safe for you. So sometimes in a situation like that, what you need to do is just have really clear boundaries that aren't necessarily vulnerable, right? And it's just like, I pick up the kids then, I drop them off then, I discuss what's needed with you. If you start to cross a line, I say, no, you can't cross that line. And we keep it very kind of business. And if there's ever an opening where you feel it's safe and maybe you could at some point express, like, I've had to be this way with you because I don't feel safe. And you would have to gauge if there's ever an opportunity to have a conversation like that. Maybe there will be one, maybe there won't. But yes, to answer your question, keep it simple. Absolutely. When somebody is not able to be a safe space for your vulnerability, they don't deserve it. And I think the pitfall that we fall into here is we go all the way over to like aggression or anger or hate, right? And so to keep our own hearts open and to remain as loving as we can possibly be ourselves, we say, I'm not going to be particularly vulnerable with this person. I'm going to have clear boundaries. I'm going to limit the relationship as needed, but I'm still going to love them from a distance. Just because I've needed to create reasonable boundaries to protect myself, to protect my kids, to maintain the situation, I'm not going to withdraw or close my heart to the person. That's a whole other topic. Now I'm talking about living an open-hearted life, which I think is important when we have difficult relationships, to be able to keep our heart open even in difficult relationships. Because if you close your heart down to him, you're closing your heart down overall. Little bit different topic. I can't get too much into that today, but I want to say, to answer your question, yes, you protect your vulnerability, you create boundaries, you have certain ways of operating, you limit it to that as needed. Thank you for the question, Carrie. Great question. So Kelsey Lulu is asking, how do I surrender? My ex moved on within a week, 3 months ago, and I still need him to ring to choose to want me. He was emotionally and mentally abusive. At the end, broke me. Got it. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. So I'm just going to read the question one more time. How do I surrender? My ex moved on within a week, 3 months ago, and I still need him to ring to choose me and want me. He was emotionally and mentally abusive at the end, and it broke me. So sending lots of love to you, Kelsey, as you're healing. What I want to say is, what you're experiencing right now is grief. And I've talked a lot about grief on the show and how to deal and process with grief. It's a journey. It's a process. And maybe just a recommendation I can make for you to start is to do a little research on the stages of grief, right? There's denial, there's bargaining, there's depression, there's anger, and then ultimately acceptance. And so it's kind of a journey we go through as we move through each of these stages. And it's not a linear journey either. Like sometimes we go back and forth through the stages. You might be right now in a denial or a bargaining stage if you're still waiting for him to call and choose you, right? And that means you haven't really allowed what's happened to penetrate your heart and really accept that, this is over. He's not calling. He's not going to choose me. And part of what will come as you move through these stages is to recognize that I don't even want him to. He was abusive. I don't want abuse in my life. And so I'd say that, this is a great time to work with somebody. Having a coach or a therapist that you can work with as you go through this process is going to greatly support you. As you have someone, as you're grieving this loss and kind of rebuilding your identity outside of this relationship, you want to do that in the healthiest way possible. And a lot of times when we're deeply wounded, our survival responses just kind of take over. And then we can often end up reinforcing the wounding and coming out worse than before. And so this is a great time to really work with somebody and have somebody kind of support you and guide you as you rebuild your identity outside of this relationship. But what I want to say is it's going to take time. And you're going to go through all of these stages, the denial, the bargaining, the anger, the depression, the ultimately leading to acceptance in the long term. And if you allow yourself to really grieve in this process and really feel this fully, and you allow yourself to rebuild your identity in a healthy way and in a strong way, you will come out of this better than ever before. You will feel more worthy than ever before. You will not allow a relationship like this to ever happen in your life again. And the opposite of that, or the bad news, is that if you just kind of survive this experience and you don't really heal through it, then these patterns are going to double down. They're going to become more pronounced than ever before. And moving forward, you're going to create more of this in your life. And so what I really want to touch on here is that these opportunities where we're broken, where, our heart just breaks wide open and we're crushed. These are opportunities for us to really heal. And sometimes the reason that we're broken open like that is to create a space for healing that would not have happened in any other way. You're not just healing from this relationship, but you're healing from a pattern of relationships that's existed throughout your entire life. I did a podcast episode 2 or 3 weeks ago on healing from heartbreak. And I'd recommend that you listen to that. Again, if you just subscribe to the Conscious Love Show, you can find it on all major podcast platforms. Go back 2 or 3 weeks. You'll see an episode about healing from heartbreak. I'm going to recommend that you listen to that episode. That's where I really go into detail on how to heal through something like this. But what I want to really impress right now is that you have the opportunity to come out of this better than ever before or worse than ever before. In either case, it's going to take some time and it's going to be challenging and it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to hurt. So the pain is unavoidable. The loss, the loneliness, that is unavoidable. You're going to experience that either way. The question is, how do you use this time? And I'd say listen to that podcast where you can really get some more detail on a more in-depth conversation on this. Just sending you love. I know what it's like to experience heartbreak. I've had some devastating heartbreak in my life, and I know what that feels like. And if you're going through that right now, to you or to anybody who's going through that, I just want to send you so much love and let you know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, right? There is light at the end of the tunnel, and you're in the tunnel right now, and you're going to need to really work and navigate your way through that tunnel. So, we're here for you. You can feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to discuss further, and definitely check out that podcast. Okay. So much love. Thank you for the question. Sending you lots of love and healing. And I hope you find your way with this and that you come out better than ever before. All right. I want to just send everybody some love. Thank you for being with me today. As always, it's such a pleasure. I look forward to this every week. I love diving in and connecting with all of you. Thank you for the questions and the shares and everything you've brought to today's show. If you're just joining in, this is the Conscious Love Show podcast. This episode will be uploaded tomorrow, Wednesday morning, and you can find it on all major podcast platforms. That's Apple and Spotify and Amazon, and anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can find us there. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you do listen to podcasts. If you can't always be here live with me, you can always catch the show in your car or wherever you go by subscribing to the show. And just thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. Lots of love and blessings to everybody. I'll be back here next week. I'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Lots of love, and we'll see you then. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.